Did you know eating human flesh is better than a health potion in Baldur's Gate 3? Or that you can move hundreds of items easily with just one click? What about that AoE spells can be used to activate potions without requiring any action points? If not, then you're in the right place. Let's get things started with the most overpowered item you probably started with, and that's the Mask of the Shapeshifter. This item opens up so many options in this game. It allows you to shrink your character's size down to that of a halfling and squeeze into small holes that normally the larger characters cannot enter. As you play this game, you're going to come across many items that have this conditional racial tag on them, such as this sword which causes any Githyanki using it to get an additional bonus roll for their damage. You can shapeshift to allow any race to get that bonus. To get this to work, you must transform and then re-equip the weapon afterwards, because it checks on equip if you're the correct race. In the current version of the game, the helm's ability can also be cast and then switched off to another helm, allowing you to keep the transformation active. You can even shapeshift to skip multiple encounters and still get full experience, such as posing as a drow or a Githyanki to unlock unique dialogues which completely skip the fight. So the next time you see those racist Giths around, try posing as one and it might be a little friendlier. Shapeshifting can even be used to get extra rewards through certain dialogues. The best use case I've found for this is that in Act 1, you can speak to the camp cook to get the item Gruel. It costs 0 action points to use even while in combat, and it heals for more than a minor healing potion. You can even spam multiple Gruel during one turn in a fight, but normally you're limited to just one of these per character. Shapeshifting allows you to switch to another race and get a second one of these. You can repeat that for each character if you really wanted to. Just make sure you take the Gruel out of your camp supplies section where it might default to. But if you don't have the Mask of the Shapeshifter, you can also do all of these tricks using the Shapeshift spell. Next, we'll take a look at Hirelings. For only 100 gold, you can pick them up and they come with a resurrection scroll, a health potion, and a full set of gear. So if you really wanted to, you can strip them of their gear and go sell it and get most of your money back anyways. With the added bonus of generating your own nudist colony. Hirelings can also be used to get more attempts to re-roll something that you may have failed. So if you didn't have a save file and you're desperate to see what would happen if you passed that skill check, go to your camp, pick up your Hireling, bring it back, and do the check. Or maybe you just leveled up and you want to test out your new spell and you don't have a target dummy at your camp. Well, now you do. Or if you want to use Astarion's bite ability on them, it'll make him happy. You can have up to 3 Hirelings at once and easily change them out for different ones, or change their classes as you wish. Every time you long rest, their spell slots are fully restored at camp, so you can go to camp, pick one of these up, just to get them to use their knock ability to open a locked door in some area, and then dismiss them right after. This also remains true for a spell like Featherfall, or if you needed some additional healing between your fights. Now if you really wanted to exploit these Hirelings, you can use their buffs while in camp, such as Aid or Longstrider, any buff that is not considered to be concentrated. You're going to have a much easier time in Act 2 if you use a Hireling to cast Daylight on one of your characters. Or with just a few druids, you can summon good berries to have enough for your long rests and never have to worry about camp supplies again. Now, let's look at a few ways to make your item management in Baldur's Gate a lot simpler. Some amazing new features got added that I think a lot of people didn't know about. For one example, we now have shift clicking, which allows you to click one item and then hold shift and click another item in your bags. It will then select all the items in between, allowing you to drag hundreds of items at once, making it easy to drop them on the floor, send them to an ally, or drag them into a chest. They've also added control clicking, which is a very similar feature, allowing you to individually click items and then add them to a group selection to drag them at once. But the annoying part is that both of these features do not work at the vendor screen. But luckily, I've got a trick for that too. So before you go to speak to the vendor, you can shift click or control click the items in your bags, and then right click them and click add to wares. Now when you go to the vendor, hit the trade button at the top, and then now at the bottom it'll say sell wares, which instantly sells them all for you rather than having to click them one by one. Also, when you hit tab, there's now this very useful search inventory button in the top left corner, as well as a sort by option. The sort by is most useful for finding something heavy that you accidentally picked up and now encumbers you. And I find the search option most useful for finding my healing potions or my resurrection scrolls. Because if you play this game the way I do, and pick up every single item in the game because you never know when you might need a severed hand, then you're never going to find anything in this mess without using search. You can also combine search and shift clicking to make it very easy to sort your items into specific bags. For example, if you wanted a bag of just scrolls, you can easily search scrolls, hold shift and click them all and drag them in. Or if you want all of your arrows on the ranger, easy. Search arrows, shift click, send, done. And lastly, we have shift click dragging, which allows you to split your stacks very easily. Then you can double click the number here, type in the exact amount that you want to split the stack into, and then send it to your friends in multiplayer much easier. In the bottom left of your screen when you're in a conversation, there's 4 buttons that people often overlook. There's the trade button, which is probably the most well-known one, allowing you to trade with nearly anyone, even characters that normally don't have a trade option in their dialogue tree. But then you have these other buttons that almost nobody uses. This one is character select. Oftentimes, one of your characters is stuck in dialogue, but your other characters can move around freely. So if you're in conversation and you see that your character has the option for attack and you know that you're going to use that option, take a moment, go to the character selection screen and reposition the characters for a fight. That way you're not all grouped up and just get AoE'd down on the first turn. Or you can set up your melee to go into a specific spot for the fight. There's also this attack option right here. This attack option is actually pretty cool. When you're watching a cutscene, sometimes you're going to see that a character ran away at the end of it, or they locked a door on you, or maybe during the cutscene the character just died. And you probably never even got any dialogue options. But by hitting this attack button, you can actually interrupt the scene, and oftentimes you can attack them during it, allowing you to possibly intervene and save a character who you thought had a scripted death, or get through a door that would normally be locked at the end of the cutscene. Lastly, this button here is the dialogue history button, so if you skipped a scene by mistake, you can review it here. It's most useful in multiplayer when you showed up late to the conversation and you can catch up yourself real quick. I think most people know that you can click and drag items around the world, or even directly out of your bags and place them or even rotate them with the mouse wheel. But you may not have realized that it's very strong in battles, because it costs no action points. You can drop throwable items such as alcohol or alchemist fire directly into a ground effect like Cloud of Daggers or a pool of fire, allowing them to trigger without using any of your action points. Just click the item in your bag and drag it to the floor. This even works for health potions, so you can trigger them right at the edge of the Cloud of Daggers and walk through them to pop multiple health potions in a single turn. Doorways, hallways, and ladders can also easily be blocked off with items, giving you more time if you're in a desperate situation. And actually, doors in this game are going to be your best friend in combat. They act as a funnel, so as long as you stay on one side of the door, enemies will keep coming to you. You can set up traps in the doorways such as items or spell effects, or you can keep closing the door and using it as a shield after you attack. Now, let's go over what stat stick weapons are. You should keep your eyes out for weapons or armor that can help you out with bonus stats, even if you never actually use it. A couple of examples here are shields. Humans are proficient in shields, so having a shield equipped is basically 2 AC for free, even if you never use the shield, making a human ranger or spellcaster much more defensive than other options. Also, there are a few items in the game, such as this dagger here, which increase your character's crit chance. But that crit chance modifier does not just apply to attacks with the dagger, it also applies to your ranged attacks and your spells. One more example is the Bow of the Banshee. This effect causes your bow's attacks to possibly inflict frightened on the target, and gain a 1d4 bonus to your hit and damage rolls if they are frightened. The bonus damage rolls are also applied to your melee attacks or your spells as a caster, as you can see in my combat log right here. Next we have reactions. Reactions are an additional stat in the combat economy, which in the early game is mostly reserved for things like attack of opportunity. But as you progress through the game, you're going to get a lot more of these, and they're usually defaulted to be on autocast. But to be honest, you don't want these things to be on autocast for optimal play. So by toggling them to ask when you get to make the decision about when it happens, you can avoid a bad opportunity attack, such as on exploding on death targets, or when you're fighting an enemy that may switch its focus to the last target that hit it. So there are times that you do not want these reactions to happen. You can do this by going into the reactions button here, clicking on this little icon, and then toggling them to ask. If you don't want that reaction to be used ever, then click the button on the left and it'll never pop up to ask you about it again. I like to do that with spells that I don't want to use higher level spell slots on. Now the rest of these tips I have for you guys today are a little bit more specific, such as picking up corpses if you run a necromancer build and find yourself struggling to find them all the time. Just pick a few of them up, send them to camp, and raise them as you need. Or if you're fighting an enemy who keeps raising the dead, you can pick up those corpses so that they run out of fuel during the fight. You can cancel concentration on a spell by clicking this little X under the character's portrait. It's very useful for a spell like Cloud of Daggers to prevent any accidental injuries. You can use Shove to push a locked chest off of a cliff to break them open if you're too weak to do it yourself. Much like Gruel that I mentioned earlier in the video, there's another item in the game called Suspicious Meat, which you're going to find 4 of very easily in the Goblin Camp prison in Act 1, next to a dismembered corpse. If you just pick up the item, it would go into your camp supplies. But if you take it out of your camp supplies, you'll find that you can right-click it and consume. By doing this, it rolls a 4d4 healing effect. Much like Gruel, this does not use any action points even while in combat, and you have no downside to doing this. You don't need to click the beds when you go for a long rest. You can just keep hitting the button in the bottom right to speed up the process. The illusion spell in this game is totally broken. You can group up enemies into one area very quickly. Similarly, a bard can perform in front of a group of NPCs to do the same thing. For Act 2, it's very useful to put a torch and your weapon on your hotkeys so you can just press 1 and 2 to switch between them. And now I'm going to end off the video with a few more tips that are just clearly exploits. You can pickpocket Withers an unlimited amount of times and he never gets angry when you fail. You can keep spamming it to eventually get all of the gold back that you've given him during your playthrough. Meaning resurrections and hirelings are literally free. For a short period in the game, you're going to have access to waypoints that go between acts. When you do this, it actually fully heals all of your characters except for Hirelings, and if they were dead, it restores them back to life. You can use crates to jump over the walls in the basement areas of maps. But to be honest, those last few tips, they're probably all going to be patched out. If you've learned anything new in this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for future content. Anyways, thanks for watching. Proxy out.